We'll do some pins here. Hey, everybody, we're just about ready to get rolling. Got to find Evan again so I can put a pin in him. Not literally, of course. Happy Tuesday. Yeah, it's Tuesday, right? I still don't have a Santa hat, but got the bar a little dressed up with some lights and Christmas meese, which I believe is the plural of moose. Or reindeer. I guess it makes more sense that they're reindeer, doesn't it? Now that I say that out loud. I just wanted to use the word meese as in the plural. While we're waiting for stragglers, which undoubtedly, I'm a little off tonight. There will be some. I need to unbox my box from the cluster box and then unbox it as well. So, Evan, you suggested that this might be the highlight of the show for some
That's right.
the other day.
This show is a cluster box, I think.
I like that description. If only we could come up with yet another Kensington wine market word that somehow incorporated that idea. Anyway, this tasting is also known as Is. So we're on the Is tasting. And it has not been tampered, so I don't have to yell at anybody. And as I open the box, I find some bottles. What a surprise. I guess tonight, people are probably already opened these, have probably already poured them, but we've got a single malt scotch, a single malt scotch, single malt scotch, another single malt, a single malt Dutch whiskey, fun, and single malt scotch.
That last wrong one is wrong then.
Oh, is there supposed to be a B?
Yeah, that I believe that should be a blended malt.
I know. Well,
Our bad.
I think, I suspect if I know, I think this was something that we uncovered. Yeah, it definitely has the B word on there, but as long as it's linking to the correct product and the liquid is the correct liquid, there was bound to be a typo of sorts in the calendar. It's sort of, too polished a Kensington wine market product would just come across as
Yeah,
inauthentic, insincere.
people would think it was forgery, a fraud. So I'm not sure. Harmony was in here for a second, but she seems to have been booted. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, let's plow forward. Uh, most of you are probably in on the last one, so you know how this goes. Hopefully you poured your 5 drams, or if you're pouring them one at a time, you have dram number 1 in front of you.
And
No
well,
money back there, Dan. Just so you
and
know.
Evan, if they haven't poured them, uh, this is a good opportunity for them to do that while we use this opportunity to sell them further goods and services.
That's
Uh,
right.
Namely, our winter virtual tastings are all up. Actually, not just the virtual tastings, but this is already poured, the old malt cask tasting. Scotch Malt Whisky Society for January should be poured very shortly, probably by Thursday. Brookladdy Octomore, an Octomore off. That should be ready soon. We've added spots to this tasting. In fact, a bunch of our tastings sold out. The first batch sold out so quickly, including this Kilkerran 10th or 20th anniversary tasting, that we had to double them and add spots. So both of these here are actually the Octomore and the Kilkerran we're selling so quickly that we actually added spots. There's our Burns Bash. There's Blinded by Bourbon with Evan and Harmony, an intro to whiskey that's in store. Lost in translation, we need to get a better photo up for this because it's more than just this Nika bottling. We've also got a Chichibu bottling in this range, Chiro's Malt and Grain, and then the rest of the range is going to be built around the Nika portfolio because it's about the Nika 90th anniversary. But we had the opportunity finally, for the first time in a decade, Evan, that we've had Chichibu in this province that wasn't like aftermarket priced, something like that, and Bowmore. So those are all up. There'll be some more tastings in the not too distant future, but they're kind of like this, but without the colorful labels.
Yeah, less Christmas lights in the background too. Are we pouring more of the Ardbeg one? Just out of
No,
curiosity?
Ardbeg is sold out. And part of the reason for that is that we're going to be doing an in-store, like, or not in-store, an in-town Ardbeg dinner at some point in the new year. So the decision was made to save our powder for that. So in addition to the virtual, there's going to be an Ardbeg dinner in Calgary at some point in the new year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Anyway, I think that's all the pre-selling I had, other than, I guess, and this is a bit remiss to say, if someone's watching this on Facebook and feeling left out because they don't have a full Monty, we've actually made some more. I don't know if Harmony finished them today, but we've produced, I believe, a total of 13 more, and there are 10 left. So if you're
Mhm.
not in on this fun yet and you'd still like to get in on it, we've made a bit more. But I think
Yeah,
that
or if you want to inflict us on other people, which is also a lot of fun around Christmas time, you're more than welcome to by spending $333 or $330 to do so. Well, let's dive into this round of 5 whiskeys, starting with whiskey number 1. This is if you're going back to day 5, this day 6 marks our second KWM cask in a row. This is our boutique Speyside 24-year-old KWM cask. So not a 25-year-old, just shy of that, from a mystery distillery that we know is Glenlivet, but it doesn't say so on the bottle.
Mhm. If it did, though, we'd have to charge you more because
Absolutely.
we would have been charged more. Not because we're bad people, but because the producer
That's
would
the
have
way it
charged
works.
more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, can you think of a Glenlivet bottling that wasn't done, that said Glenlivet on the bottle that wasn't G&M recently?
No, I mean, that's a really good point, Evan. I mean, we've seen some gorgeous, especially older Gordon MacPhail Glenlivets, but I think Signatory would have been one of the last ones we've had,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not something we see often. I just realized I made a terrible mistake pouring out the entire contents of most of my whiskeys,
Mhm.
thinking that this was a regular tasting and not an Advent one with twice the dram.
Well, this is a fun cast to start with. This is by far our lightest whiskey in the entire lineup so far.
Mhm.
This is very light, very waxy with some nice soft fruit notes to it. 49% alcohol and change, if I remember correctly, but just a gorgeous, gorgeous older Space cider from an ex-bourbon
47.8,
barrel.
Evan, if the website is to be believed, and the bottle.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and this was this a take it or leave it, if I remember correctly, from
Well, this one, no, we
boutique?
actually got to taste this one. I think we learned our lesson the first time around. Um,
Hmm.
Not that that boutique Kleinlich we purchased doesn't have its merits, but I think it was not as waxy as we were expecting, and it was quite a bit farmier.
Yeah.
But this one, the sample was small. I don't think there was a lot of time to pick it. And if I remember correctly, Sean and I was like, dude, I got to make a really quick decision on this.
Hmm.
And we tried, and we were just like, holy crap, this is good for the price. And I mean, it really is, like, even if you don't factor in on the Glenlivet bit, and if you somehow wrap your head around the 500 ml thing, which I know a lot of people really struggle with the bottle size with the boutique bottlings, for a 24-year-old cast strength single malt, it's a great price. There's just
Hmm.
no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You cannot get distillery bottled or even independently bottled, really, 24-year-old single malt at this kind of a price. The fact that it's gorgeous and it's Glenlivet adds to it in a way. But yeah, decadent, fruity, soft,
Yeah, I
waxy.
would say this is waxier than the Kleinlich,
It is definitely
even.
waxier than the Kleinlich. Now, the label on this was done under their Cinema Series label, and you might have seen a bargain priced sister cask to this briefly on our website. We had,
Mhm.
I think we put that up last week and they sold out almost instantly because they were 50% off. I think that was a 250 price for that one because that was not our cask, but we got a deal. I think somebody else must have committed to it and then not bought the stock. And then we were given a deal we could not refuse to make it go away. But it looked identical to this, except for underneath the, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid you can't name this. Ours says bottled exclusively for Kensington Wine Market. The other one did not. And obviously, we all know that this is a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Dave is the brand ambassador. He can't tell us what this is. But Evan, I believe there was a pretty blatant clue as to what this could be on the
Yeah,
back label.
there were three clues in their write-up for it, from what I recall, and I think I actually put the write-up in the blog post and in the tasting notes there. It says our label is a riff on 2001 Space Odyssey, spacecraft manned by two men in the supercomputer HAL 9000. Our spacecraft is this very modern, with the joint largest capacity secret Speyside distillery that could be run by just two men and a computer. So based on that, it has to be either Glenfiddich or Glenlivet. And then Glenlivet, unlike Glenlivet, there is no single malt Glenfiddich from an independent bottler that I can never recall seeing. I could be wrong. Usually they parcel out blended malt that's been teaspooned or supposedly teaspooned with Canimbi or Belvini or something else, so that it cannot be named. And then the other one hint in there says, I bet you, we think you'll Glenlivet, which is kind of gives it all away.
It's a lot closer to Glenlivet than it is to Glenfiddich, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
they did another whiskey that was apparently from Glenfiddich, although teaspooned, and it's called Fiddleneck, which again, props off for some of their names.
Yeah.
They're funny, the little pseudonyms, the marketing plans they come up with. But yeah, I think this is an incredible whiskey, not in that it's the most complex, but just that it's great bang for buck. It's dangerously easy drinking. It's tropical, it's waxy, and
Yeah, it's just a gorgeous whiskey.
yeah, and what would you pay for 25-year-old Glenfiddich, which I don't even think we've seen in market for ages?
Yeah. Well, and even the 21-year-old Glenlivet's what is it? Not the Caribbean Reserve or whatever they call it now.
Oh,
And the
you're
21-year-old
you're talking
Glenlivet Archives.
Glenfiddich.
Yeah, pardon me.
The Caribbean Reserve is Glenfiddich, but
Yeah.
the Glenlivet, I mean, supposedly it's available. Well, it's sold out at the SAQ in Quebec for $367. Certain other stores not to be named in the greater Calgary area suggest Glenlivet XXV is approximately $565 or more a bottle. Even when you do the math on this is less than half the price and a great drink.
Absolutely. Yeah, really good place to start. We talked about it a little bit in our more peat laden lineup that showcased days 1 to 5. We kind of had some keynotes that or key styles we were trying to hit on with each calendar series. So we wanted to get something peated. I think Andrew wanted a world whiskey in there. And then what was the other one? Something sherry cast, if I remember correctly. So we'll see. It looks like we have something Dutch in here. But the peat is maybe a hint toned down from the last tasting, but it's almost impossible for it not to be. I think the only more peated tasting we're going to have is that Octomore tasting that's coming up. And the Ardbeg and Bowmore ones, but
Yeah.
Let's go on to number 2.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw Chris's comment there. No GST starting Saturday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to Scotch. It applies to wine and beer. And it's still not 100% official because unless I missed the news today, they still haven't even passed that through Parliament and or the Senate. So in theory, starting Saturday, there's no GST on wine and beer. And we've got to figure out how to reprogram our websites and point of sales, but it's still not even officially going to happen. Like the Senate could decide to not do it, which I think is probably unlikely, but it's not even law. Like they're giving us days to figure this crap out. So
Mhm.
you can tell how I feel about this whole idea. Um, but if it saves you all some money on wine, I'm not that opposed to it. I just wish they'd not thought of this at the 11th hour and 11th minute,
They're using the
whatever.
KWM method of bringing in
Yeah.
laws.
No, no,
Yeah,
no. This is
it's
even worse than us, Harmony. It's a step even beyond that.
yeah.
They're
No,
giving you a
this
chance
is
to
totally
make a law.
KWM. This is proclamations first and figure it out later.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I recognize this tactic.
Well,
That's right.
maybe it works to run a small, plucky business, but it doesn't to run a country.
Yeah,
So if
True
it,
that's
that.
very
if
true.
it even does the other.
Okay, well let's go on to number 7 and let's blow out our taste buds with the Lochlea Cask Strength Batch 2. This is an absolutely massive whiskey in my opinion. It is unpeated, but it is 60% alcohol. It's batch 2, which is I should have put a side-by-side shot with whiskey batch 1 and batch 2 because there's a marked color difference even on this one. But 60% alcohol from a combination of what is it? Ex-sherry, STR casks, and quite a few other things that they could throw at it, if I remember correctly. But from a pretty cool distillery in the Lowlands called Lochlea, with a pretty darn good price on a lot of their whiskeys as well. Was up until recently headed by John Campbell, formerly of Lefroy, but he's moved on to a California distillery since September. But look at the color on that Lochlea. That is not some shopping that happened to make that color there.
So
It is
Evan,
dark.
it's Pedro Jimenez, according to this, Oloroso and double matured American oak and XTR. So I
Yep.
guess the 12% is the American oak and the STR. It's funny because it does have like a tomatoey, like it's kind of like I would
Mhm.
imagine a Mexican hamburger and tomato stew would smell like.
Yeah, it does have some sort of almost like tomato sauce and basil and a bit of oregano in there as well. Um, but it's also got this weird, I've just poured a bunch of Skittles in my Sprite note to it for me.
Mole Adam is saying. It was very beefy when I first noticed it. It's settling down a little bit.
Mhm. So no smoker peat. This is barley from their own farms, which surround the distillery.
Mhm.
I love this profile of sherry. Like it's got
Mhm.
great tannins and mouthfeel. I'm not scared or feeling intimidated by that 60%. And I'm just getting just waves and waves of fruit. Um, and just it's really enjoyable.
The palette is actually is lovely. It's simple. Like I don't
Yeah.
think it's like insanely complex.
Mhm.
But I found the nose was like a little like I was a little worried where this was going to go on the palate. It smelled a little overcooked, but the palate balanced out nicely. And maybe it's that like little bit of PX in addition to the Oloroso, adding a
Mhm.
bit of sweetness to it. I think if they'd gone full Oloroso, this would have just been meaty, meaty, meaty.
For me, this is still like a kitchen sink whiskey. Like there's no tasting note or flavor descriptor that you couldn't throw out, that you couldn't make a justification for. It is wild and crazy. It's not necessarily all over the place, but it is packed full of flavor.
A little
Mhm.
farmy.
Mhm.
My first note was just like tons of fruit, like opening a fresh bag of nibs. But then at the same time, it has this like deep kind of prune and fig note that's
Mhm.
just like heavier and denser underneath that like bright raspberry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to say anything about Lochlea, but like farm distillery, very small.
Mhm.
They're notable in that uh, of all the 40 new distilleries that have opened, the 40-ish distilleries that have opened in Scotland in the last decade, they are the only one that almost nobody knew about until they were ready to launch whiskey. Like everybody else was bragging about their distillery, posting on Instagram, doing all kinds of shit. And I don't think Lochlea did a single thing until they were literally months away from bottling their first release,
Yeah,
which
they
is
really missed out
kind
by
of unique.
not making a gin.
Well, there's that, but I just think it's incredible that, they got to 3 years of operations. And if you think about it, probably 5 years total, because they got to
Mhm.
buy the stills, get the stuff installed, get everything dialed in, start producing. So, by the time you've done that, you've got to be at least a year and a half, 2 years. And they were almost at the point of having legal whiskey, 3-year-old whiskey, before almost anybody knew they even existed.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And they, beyond John Campbell, even before John Campbell, they had another uh, relatively well-known around the industry name connected with the distillery, and that helped them get them up and running. And that person has gone on to help sort of restart Rosebank Distillery since moving on from Lochlea.
Yeah. Good whiskey. Should we mention the other notable thing about Lochlea? That
Yeah.
Or should
Robert,
we save it?
no,
Yeah.
Robert Burns spent 5 minutes there when he was a child. I think he was there a little longer. It was like 5 years.
Yeah, it's somewhere between 5 minutes and 7 years.
Yeah.
Well, his and up until the point where his father died, I think.
So it was before they were like destitute.
Yeah.
They were at Lochlea. So probably happy years.
Yeah, this is back when he was working and not just an alcoholic poet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, it's good. It's lovely. I think for the price point, it's pretty good bang for buck.
Mhm.
You know, but it's no Glenlivet 24-year-old, that's for sure.
Agreed. Okay, on to number 3. And we are hitting peat this time around. This is Longrow Peated from Springbank Distillery.
Yeah, and this is kind of a fun one to put into the lineup. I mean, we've not really ever had, or for the longest time, we've not had enough Springbank anything to put it
Mhm.
into an advent calendar, let alone really put it even on the website. So it was kind of cool to be able to include this. And as a special treat tonight, we actually have stock available for sale for people taking part in tonight's tasting. I believe we have 24 bottles. They are first come, first serve, limit 1 per person. And I will put that link up on the site because you might actually have a hard time finding it. It was disabled until recently. Now, Evan, we've been calling this Longrow Envy, and it's still going to say that on the website until the website
It
turns
updates.
over. But that's not what
Yeah.
it's called anymore, is it?
No, I believe it's called Longrow Peated, which is the name that they've, I don't know, we probably just didn't notice because we haven't been able to have any on the shelf for so long.
Or put it on the website. I think we put it on the website
Yep.
briefly in the spring because we came into a larger than expected quantity of it, and then we put
Yeah.
it on the newsletter. People got hot and bothered. It sold out in 5 minutes. The web staff were mad at me for doing that.
Yep.
But we're doing it again.
It's Springbank, so I mean we could name it Longley or Longrow Garbage Heap, and it would still sell out in minutes. Regardless, it is cool, and I think this is possibly the second Springbank only that we've had in a whiskey calendar. The last one we had, from what I could find, was in 2018, which was a visitor center bottling, which
Yeah.
I think that year we had a Glengyle / Kilcran visitor center bottling and the Springbank visitor center bottling. But we never were able to get minis beyond that, from what I recall.
I think there might have been something the first year because back then, the store and yours truly were something more of a big deal than we are now. And I mean, the reality with Springbank now is they can sell everything. They could probably put it on their website and sell everything without exporting a drop.
Yeah.
But times change, and anyway, it should be up on the site there
Yeah.
now. If anyone wants to buy themselves a bottle of Longrow, they are limited.
Yeah. Springbank could actually print money if it was, they weren't relying on a 95-year-old guy to do all their graphics.
To
I
hand
don't know if
draw
he
them
still is or not.
and hand draw each of the barcodes.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ruler gets a lot of work.
All right. I think I've done everything that required to make sure that that's functioning on there. And it still says Longrow Envy for some reason, but I'm not gonna worry too much about that.
Yeah. So Springbank wise, it's a distillery that I've kind of done my best to ignore as it's gotten more and more popular, which is very, very difficult because it does do really good whiskey. And this is my first Longrow that I've had in a long time. But man, like it's either good all the time or this is a really good batch because I think this one is incredibly well put together.
I think every time we've had a Longrow in the last little while, they've been great.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the exact cask makeup is on these. But it comes across as being a lot of ex-bourbon. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's a nice funkiness to it. The smoke and peat are there, but they're nowhere near as big as you're thinking they're going to be. There's a nice
Mhm.
briny, salty, kind of salted caramel thing. And then there's these nice orchard fruits like apple and pear mixed in there with the peat.
Yeah. And some just along with that, some great fresh grain note in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh man,
This
on the palate.
it,
That's
it
what
kind of
this,
reminds me of walking into their floor maltings when I was there in 2019.
I mean, this on the palate. I mean, there's not a lot of distilleries that have this profile. This just tastes like whiskey from a bygone era. I mean, their website says matured in bourbon and sherry. And Evan, you're right on their website. They call it Longrow Peated now. Um, but yeah, this tastes older and from like a different era. It's just awesome. Man.
Paul Hunter says new car smell.
Oh,
I could see that. It does have a little bit of that like fresh vinyl or fresh pleather note.
so the funny thing is, Tom's saying there's something about Campbellton peat. Funny thing
Yep.
about that is the peat they use in Campbellton, I think actually comes from the Highlands because they
Hmm.
can't get Campbellton peat. Does that
They
ring a
drown
bell
it in
from,
that sounds about right. They drown it in Campbelltown rain though.
yeah, because they keep half of it wet. But no,
Mhm.
it's just the style. It's just that Campbellton style, the Springbank style. It's that old
Great
school
fruitiness.
long fermentations. Um, yeah. Harmony, you've been very quiet on this, or I've been talking too much.
No, I'm enjoying listening, just drinking my whiskey, but I have always loved the Longrow profile. I have my own little humble collection, not like some of you guys I know, but I've always enjoyed its kind of subtlety of a bold peat profile. If that's not too contradicting, but yeah, I've seen in the chat a lot of comments about like, lawn cuttings with the gas motor engine or chainsaws and wet wood. And I think I relate to some of that just from my upbringing. And I find this whiskey just very comforting and really enjoyable. So I'm okay to just sit back and enjoy it and listen to you guys talk.
Uh, According to Google, Springbank's peat might come from Isla, but for some reason, I'm not sure that's correct. We'll have to do more digging on this. Someone commenting pre-order. I think that was to discourage people, but there are 24 bottles in stock at this very moment. Order away, fret not, unless you're the 25th person, in which case you should fret.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, great stuff. It sucks that they make such good whiskey.
Well, can I gripe about the fact that they don't make enough of it?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's getting better, but I mean, my biggest frustration has been that the distillery still produces and I think they're now Kilkerran, Glengyle, and Springbank last year combined were maybe 400,000 liters total, which sounds like a lot until you realize that Kilhoman is producing 1 million. I believe they're producing 1 million liters a year. And so they're still
And
producing
expanding
less
again.
than
Yeah.
what's that, Evan?
Does Glengyle have its own floor maltings yet?
No, but I think they were talking about building a maltings plant in Campbellton
Wow.
just in time for the whiskey bust cycle to hit. But yeah, I believe there was talk of them building a like a drum maltings or something to supply Kilkerran so that they could increase the production at Springbank while still using their existing malting floors.
Crazy. That seems like way too modern. I don't know who thought of that idea. That's not Victorian at all.
Mm-hmm. Sasha saying I'm comparing this to a 2018 batch, and this one's more grassy and the peat is more intense. Both delicious. Yeah, I think what happens with these sometimes is we bring them in and then you know, we can't put everything into a ballot because then that just makes the ballot too hard to run. And so sometimes we tuck them away. And I think the idea, I even said to Harmony and Evan, like, hey, why don't we just, instead of putting it in a ballot, why don't we just put the Longrow into the calendar? And then we got offered more of it. It's like, all right, well, then we'll just offer it to people who have a calendar. So there you go. Anyway, nice little treat.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going from Campbelltown Peat to Dutch single malt
Yeah.
for number 4. This is another big bold one. This is a 25-year-old Millstone single malt whiskey from Zweedam Distillers in Barl Nassau within the Netherlands. So made by Patrick van Zweedam, who was just here.
Evan, I love how you even refer to the region or the province that it comes from in the Netherlands, because I don't think I've ever gone that deep. Although I love to comment on the fact that the Millstone distillery exists on the borders with Belgium, and that
Yep.
the block across the street from it is technically Belgium. It's this part of Belgium and the Netherlands that during the Napoleonic Wars got carved up, and they both have little pieces of each other's country in each other's country. And Patrick was complaining at one point that he couldn't build a new distillery because the block across the street from him that he wanted to build on was in Belgium, even though it was in the middle of the Netherlands. So
Easy.
Couldn't he just make 2 styles of whiskey?
well, I don't
Yeah,
know.
a Dutch whiskey and a Belgian whiskey.
The
Yeah,
question
just
is,
like have the line arm go across the street, catch it on the other side.
yeah, I guess the question would be who to pay taxes to and when.
That's
And
right.
do you have to submit duty to take your whiskey across the street just to taste it?
Well, and what happens if one separates from the EU? I mean, can you imagine?
I can't believe that when this all happened, they couldn't just be like, all right, you keep those blocks and we'll give you these blocks and vice versa. But no. Anyway. So 25-year-old, I believe, Evan, this is 1996, 44.9%. This is
Yeah.
the first year, isn't it, that Patrick made whiskey at Zweedam's?
Yeah, I think it was. It was the first year, very close to the first year. Some of the first whiskey I ever made. And man, like their sherry is on, and I think I put it in the a Zoom, was it a signatory or G&M tasting that you guys did where I said like I did the best sherry of them all, and it was either Millstone, Signatory, or Gordon and MacPhail were the choices. I think Millstone should be up there because
It's
their
definitely.
sherry casks are fantastic.
Mhm.
This is just a deep, rich, like super impressively sherried whiskey.
So the story goes, as I understand it, is that when Patrick who I believe was I don't even think he was 18 when he started making whiskey, or no, he must have been 18. Anyway, he was a young man making whiskey. His family's been distilling since the 50s, something like that. At Zweedham's, he wanted the best sherry casks. He went looking for the sherry casks that people like Macallan had, the sherry seasoned casks. He couldn't get them, and so he sort of stumbled on this supply of bodega, like uh, you know, vats, like these Solera system vats of sherry, and that's why he has this. His sherry whiskeys have this really old school feel to them. Does that contradict your
Uh,
thought, Gavin?
No, no, it doesn't at all. And I actually had, I don't think Harmony was there, but I think Kurt might have been. One of the other whiskey staff was when Patrick Van Zwieden was here a couple of years ago doing a tasting, not this one this time. But we were chatting with him and just shooting the shit and talking about weather and stuff. And just, I think we asked him what else is going on at the distillery right now. And he just got like super excited and he just said, I just found and purchased from a bodega a selection of 8-year-old sherry casks or Solera casks. And he was just like, that's the most excited and animated I'd seen him up to that point. And it was just like, man, this guy really digs when he gets something good for his whiskey. It was really neat to see.
Well, it's the level. It's an attention to detail,
Absolutely.
and a pride in the work that he does. And I mean, I think some credit is due here. This is a guy who started making Scottish style single malt in the mid 90s. Like, this is before the resurgence of interest in single malt Scotch. Like, the blends were still there, and it was also at the tail end of like the roughest 15 years the Scotch whiskey industry had ever gone through. And this guy had the idea to start making and maturing whiskey. And think about the forethought there, or just the luck and the timing, because even Kilholman and Daft Mill didn't start production until 2005. I mean, this guy's distillery is contemporary to Aaron in terms of when Aaron got going making whiskey. And it's a crazy thing to think that it's been going now for closer to 30 years than not. So
Absolutely.
I think we should add on this that we have a very
Mhm.
limited amount of this left, which I suppose is good news for Chris Walker, but it is, I believe, nearly gone. We're down to a handful of bottles in store, and we might have 1 6-pack left that we can pull in of this. And then I think it's gone forever. Which is not to say that they don't have other bottlings, but I think this one has been a real hit.
It has been. We should mention our own KWM cask while we're at it though.
Mm.
Just because it bears mentioning.
And
So
it has our
this
photo on it.
one, it does. Did you want to share that or you want me to?
Oh, you go ahead if you've already got that teed up.
Okay. I'll tee it up if you want to talk about it, but if you're looking for something a little less expensive than the 25-year-old, this might fit the bill.
Yeah, it's 7-year-old old school sherry style Dutch single malt. I mean, it's not, kind of for a young whiskey, it's not insanely complex, but it shows that youthful sherry style very well. The alcohol, I think the integration on it is great. There's like no edges to it. Patrick's a very good distiller, very precise. But the funniest tidbit about that is the label. The label is from a painting my wife had done of the store for me for Christmas one year. I thought it would be fun to put it on the label without telling her that idea. The first thing she said when she saw that was, "Do you have the rights to use that painting on the label?" I was like, "Nope, but I've got a lawyer for a wife, so hopefully that's good enough." So I don't know. I figure she paid to have it done. That's got to be one of those legal precedents in there somewhere for that. So anyway, she commissioned
So
it.
much for your right to refuse to answer the question in fear of incriminating yourself.
Yeah, I don't think we have that right in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
that's we had a 25-year-old Millstone boutique in the Uber calendar last year. If you
mhm.
were one of the 50 people that got that one, was it 50 or 48 after we got ours? I'm not sure, but that one was possibly even more decadent than this one. This one has a bit more spice and a little bit more grip, which I think actually does it some good.
And or if for Frederica, it's got a little bit more herring than the
Yeah.
boutique one. The boutique one, the difference there, that one was oozing, it was gooey, and it was so tropical. And I mean, I hate to say it, I think if I had to choose between the two, I would probably have picked the boutique one, but the boutique one was pricier and a smaller bottle. So don't feel badly that you're stuck with this one. It's still an excellent whiskey. It's better than most OB distillery bottled 25-year-olds. Like I would put that up against 25-year-old Macallan, 25-year-old anything from a distillery in Scotland. It would show very well. And it, yeah, it's per Renata. It is Dutch. It's very Dutch. We could make some Christmas jokes about Dutch Christmas things, but some of them are, I believe, verboten or not to be spoken of because they got, anyway. They have some unique Christmas traditions which would get Justin Trudeau canceled if he was caught doing it. If you catch my drift. So you're muted, sadly, but
That's funny because I actually use the term verboten in the blog post for the next one. So the next one is a blended malt. Although it says single malt on the label, I believe. Our bad on that again. This almost drinks like a single malt now, though it's really well put together. This is the Caisteal Chamuis or Castle Camus, or as I like to call it, the Chamuel 12
I believe it's
whiskey.
Caisteal Chamus.
Yeah.
Caisteal Chamus. Harmony, I think, was there. Were you there on that virtual tasting where I was struggling the whole time to
Yes, I
follow
was
the
there.
pronunciation?
But that's now how I use, that's my beginning inner voice tool that I use to pronounce it correctly,
Mhm,
is how you used to say it.
mhm.
It's not
Yeah,
appropriate.
the company behind it, Mossburn Distillers, has actually put out a couple different YouTube things explaining the pronunciation. I think the owner might have talked about this when Andrew, and I should have linked to the YouTube uh, interview that you essentially did with him about Mossburn and Castle Camus or Hamas and
Caisteal Chamus.
Castiel
I think
Shamus.
it's closer to
Chamois.
Seamus than it is to
Yeah.
anything else.
I'm
It's just
sticking to
not.
ShamWow, and I actually made that a search term so people could find it. If you type in ShamWow whiskey on our webpage, it'll come up. But I think he talked about the reasoning behind the name and that they were definitely going for something Gaelic in style, but it was almost because they can't use Camus because that is a famous cognac brand, and so they would have gotten in trouble with that and had to find out go with something else.
I just checked, and if you do put ShamWow, all one word, in the search, the Caisteal Chamus bottles come up,
Yeah.
which is quite funny because I don't know how. Unless you tell them, how would anyone know that's how they're supposed to search them? But it's probably easier than saying like put in Castile Chamuis
Yeah.
or whatever.
It's just like it sounds, guys. It's you spell it just like it sounds.
Anyway, it is a very, I mean, there's a funny story, and I actually think it's worth quickly telling why they're doing this. So the Torveg distillery, which is really what this whiskey is about. It's not about this brand that they've created. It's named for a castle that sits on the coast in front of what is now the Torveg distillery, but at one point in time was a farmstead. This castle dates back, or the ruins, it's really a ruins. It's a heap of ruins, as the Brits would say, on the coast where I believe the MacLeans from the Isle of Skye would have been watching for Campbell's or McDonald's coming from further south. And it was ruined at some point in time after a battle doesn't really matter. But it was this whiskey that was put out to kind of as a placeholder for Torvig when it came out. And they've kind of kept it in the lineup along with the NAS version of it. And this 12-year-old is a great bottling, but
It is.
it's a challenge because who's looking for 12-year-old peated blended malts when you can get 10, 12-year-old peated single malts?
That's probably why we put single malt on the label, just to try and sell it more.
Just to fool people.
It is so it is a blend of Orkney and Isla distilleries, which is kind of a cool way to go about producing a blend too.
Looking for parallels with Torvig, it's not far off. But it's also not really bang on with it either. For those who haven't tried it, Torvig is a great little distillery. I think one of the better ones of all the new distilleries in Scotland at the moment. It helps, I think, to be fair, that it makes peated malt. Peat has a way of masking or hiding some of those more off-putting young whiskey notes. And young peated whiskeys are just more forgiving. Like they're easier to like than young unpeated malts. And I think it's just that one element adds something to the mix that just makes them better rounded. I don't know.
Yeah, I discovered this one when we did a Torvig tasting. That was a fantastic tasting. Their Mossburn whiskeys are really good as well. And they've kind of set themselves up, as Andrew said, to be an independent bottler. Although so far their labeling does not ascribe to your typical independent bottler stylistically. They seem to put a lot more thought into it. But their Torvig expressions are great. Same with the Mossburn and the Castle Chamuis here.
So we do also have these. We might as well show them because we've got these blended malts from them as well, which again I think are great value, and they're very well put together whiskeys. But we're in this era right now where there's just too much choice. There's too many options, and as good as the Speyside and the Island blended malts we have are, for the prices we're selling them at, they're white noise. They're hard to get people excited about. On the Torvig subject, we've got, I think, 3 different expressions of Torvig in right now. It's a cool distillery. If you're ever in Scotland and you're going to go visit the Isle of Skye, I highly, highly recommend you pop in to see Torvig. I would go there before you go to Talisker. It's a beautiful distillery. There's a lot of things to commend about what they're doing there and their approach to making whiskey. But one of the things that I found the most fascinating was they, rather than hire people away from other distilleries, they wanted people who would stay and work on the Isle of Skye. They went out and purposefully found people on the island who wanted to learn a new trade and have a new career, and they trained them in how to make whiskey. And as far as I know, most of, if not all of those people are still there 7-8 years on.
That's cool.
And not only that, they give these people the opportunity. I think each of their employees gets 2 weeks a year to make whatever style of whiskey they want. And the clever thing about that is that it's going to give them a reason to stick around. They're going to want to see how that matures, how it gets to the next stage. So it was interesting to see that. It was a kind of a very cool, eye-opening visit to a small distillery, effectively on the far northwest corner of Scotland. Very remote, very misty and cool and whatnot, but cool place.
Yeah. And as was pointed out, we kind of talked about it, but I don't think we said it directly. This is a fantastic value if you like this one too. It's $98.
Oh. Well, as blown away as I was by the Longrow, I'd stack that whiskey up against it in terms of like its profile. It's got a really nice profile to it.
Yeah, agreed. It's got a little bit more of sort of like a slaty mineral driven
Mhm.
style to it, but that great sort of funky cheesiness to it again. Just a really, really well put together dram.
It tastes a lot more mature than the Longrow does. The Longrow
Yeah.
is great, but it's like young, funky, fruity. Um, the Caisteal Chamuis tastes a lot more mature. It's almost funny trying to pronounce that each time. Reminds me of my dad as a kid. Well, I mean, he's still around. Benjamin Netanyahu. He just cannot pronounce that guy's name. And like somehow he pronounces it wrong and differently every single time he tries. It's incredible.
Well, there's certain things that are definitely funnier if you say it wrong though, every time though. So I can respect that.
Yeah. So are we ready for a speed round here?
Yeah. Yeah,
All right.
let's go back to number one.
Caisteal
Just
Chamuis. Is
making
this
sure that sticks in people's minds.
is that marketing that you created
Yes,
on,
it is.
was that created on
Yeah.
company time?
Absolutely was. Neither company endorsed that, by the way, if that wasn't
No.
obvious. So back to the 24-year-old Glenlivet KWM cask. It's gotten a little bit more chalky on the nose, I would say.
Yeah, there's something that reminds me of the minerality you get in cognac with that. Um, and even to a little extent, the fruit, although it's not, doesn't have that perfumed edge, but it holds up surprisingly well given the richness of everything we've just had. And very fruity, very easy drinking. I mean, I've said this a lot of times. This is the style of whiskey that I'll go home and drink on a night because it's what I like. It's older, oxidized, refill cask whiskey. Um, it's just the easiest drinking style of whiskey out there as far as I'm concerned.
It is. And I think it's the most understated of all KWM
Mhm.
casks we currently have by quite a bit.
But probably the best bang for buck when you think about what it
Absolutely.
actually is.
Yeah.
Harmony?
I love how this has changed. Like, I'm getting a lot more kind of citrus rind and definitely more
Good call.
minerality. Um, you said chalkiness. My original smell is like opening up like the vitamin C
Mm.
Mhm.
container. Um, but I love this whiskey. I think it's beautiful. Glenlivet was the first single malt scotch that I ever had, so I'm happy to say that we have a secret Speyside with their spirit inside the bottle at Kensington Wine Market.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Harmony, your background changed.
I know,
That just threw me. It only just occurred to me. I was like, that's different.
I know. I was too lazy to move the chairs and table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a bad one. I mean, there's like
Yeah.
what I assume is a Christmas palm tree lit up behind you or something.
It's a
Oh, it's a
regular
Christmas tree.
tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
It kind of
Yeah.
looks like a more festive version of the bunker that I'm always using.
Yeah, mine's
All
very
right,
festive, I think.
let's keep the speed round going. What's
I
up
like
next?
that there.
I've already forgotten what whiskey number 2 is.
Oh, it's the Lochlea.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, it's the
Fast
Lochlea.
drink number 2.
It's actually softened up quite a bit.
It
Maybe
has.
it's going through the peated whiskey, but it's not just like just a slap of flavor to the face
It
in the
smells
same way.
like Fisherman's Friends now, like original Fisherman's Friends.
Hmm. Yeah, it's gooey and syrupy with some spice notes at the same time.
Maybe like sardines on toast with a balsamic reduction drizzled on.
Well, that
Cool.
sounds good. And there is a bit of like just a slight bit of pine needle and pine sap in there, which I've gotten off other Millstone sherries.
You
This
mean
is Lochlea.
Lochlea?
Mm. Oh, thank you. Lochlea. Thank you. I have gotten that off Millstone though too, for the record.
Sardines and Buckleys.
Yeah, it's
Stepping
more,
up the medicinal
yeah, the
content a little
Buckley's.
bit.
It is on the palate, it's trending more towards like licorice flavored Fisherman's Friends and
Yeah,
Buckley's.
yeah. There's definitely a bit more of that mint note that was mentioned in the first round. It's definitely uh Adam and Kate, yeah, menthol's coming through a lot more for me as well.
Still get the fruity side of things more. Like it's Pine Needle IPA beer from the island. Good call, Ryan.
For me, it's kind of falling flat, to be honest, on the palate. Like it's just
That's
kind of
fair.
flabby.
I still get the Sprite and Skittles that I did the first time around.
Do either of you remember back when there was a Scottish beer we could get called Alba that I believe was made with like Scottish pine sap or resin or something?
I don't remember that one.
It half the time it was available, it was like almost barely drinkable, but when it was good, it was incredible. But yeah, I believe it was a Scottish beer made with like Scottish pine sap somehow.
Interesting.
Yeah. It used to be part of the Historic Ales of Scotland set that was available for a while in Alberta. Way back when in the long, long ago. All right, number 3, Longrow.
It's way
It's
more like meaty, like smoked meats, jerkies.
It still
It's-
smells
yeah,
like,
it's this. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you,
It's just got this weird, like it has to be Springbank combination of fresh and funky at the same time.
Evan, for me, it's just, this is the way that whiskeys used to smell like. Like a lot of them
Mhm.
used to have this kind of note to them. And I just think it's the way that, this is made. It contrasts with kind of the industrial way that
Yep.
a lot of whiskeys are made today. The fact that a lot of them are made with the same strain of yeast. And Springbank is just doing things a little differently.
Yeah, even the mice there punch in and punch out. Like they work shifts.
It's not quite as complex on the palate, but it's still great. So it's
Yep.
it's a bit of a one-trick pony on the palate, but it's
Mhm.
pretty decent.
I get like an old shoebox note. The shoes aren't in it, but they had been for a very long time, but it's it's a
Well,
shoebox.
someone sent cinnamon there and it made me think it's a little bit like if you could somehow synthesize the flavor of like an apple cinnamon crumble with vanilla ice cream, but there's no calories and you're just getting like a simulation of the taste, but not the actual taste.
Where it's like the shoebox that you fill with like an ex-spouse's Polaroids and stuff, but you just can't get rid of. And there's like salty tear notes in there as well.
Evan, what have you got in your basement? You
I'm
gotta
just
get
writing a
rid of
book.
that,
I'm
man.
not doing tasting notes, man.
You can't let Kate find that stuff
That's
or the
right.
kids.
Yeah. That it stays in the bunker.
Ah, all right. As long as you got something with a lock and key on it.
Yeah.
All right, Millstone 25. Oh man. Oh. It's like going into
It's
a brownie that, or going into a bakery that makes like the best chocolate brownies and date squares.
it's a tea that you oversteep for days and then added honey to just to kind of balance it out.
Where's Jeff Serger when you need him? He could comment
Yeah.
on.
He was
Jeff is in
driving.
here.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
not.
he was driving. So
Man,
Bit of maple syrup on there too.
yeah,
that's some good old
chocolate
school sherry.
maple.
Yeah, it's just a realm of sherry that just very, very few places can pull off.
Well, I mean, like, look at the color, 25 years old, first fill sherry. I mean, in a way, it's a lot like the Gordon MacPhail sherry casks, where because they're
Yeah.
seasoned longer, they don't give you as much color or as much flavor, but you get more of the spirit shining through because you're not just getting this inrush of oak and whatever residual sherry is left over. Yeah, that's pretty cool. You don't get to see that very often anymore.
Mhm.
All right, Evans ShamWow whiskey.
It's got it is full on like maybe a bit of smoke with it, but My kids are addicted slash they buy it and don't eat it, so I have to eat it. Reese's peanut butter cup cereal. It smells like the Reese's peanut butter cup cereal right now.
That's a thing?
That's a thing.
Wow. Okay, well, bring a sample to work someday because I'd like to try that. I don't know that I could
It's
buy that and like keep a straight face on my way out of the store.
yeah, it's kind of like as an adult, like you buy like 12 boxes of condoms and then put that in behind and hope they don't notice.
So the funny thing is, like I thought you were going to say, and this is what I smell like, is this has got a bit of a bounce dryer sheet thing going on right
It
now.
does. Yeah, it does. That was the added toy in the Reese's peanut butter cup cereal.
Oh, it comes with a toy too?
Yeah, no, it doesn't anymore, sadly.
Hmm.
I will bring some in if I remember though.
Because governments were like, this is bad enough. You can't give away
Mhm.
toys as well.
It's part of a balanced breakfast.
It's really tarry now on the palate. Some
It
nice
is.
caramel vanilla tones. You know, the Longrow is great. For what it is, it's excellent. I really wanted to like it more than this, but I think this holds up a little better over the course of the tasting.
It totally does. It actually shows quite well in this lineup, which is itself a bit of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, so here we have a blended malt, like a category that a lot of people look down on, one might say sneeringly at times. Um, yeah, and I mean, it's a bit of, for me, I think it's going to be a bit of a dark horse. I'm looking forward to seeing the votes here.
I like it.
All right. Evan, are we ready to poll? Are we ready to poll the
Yeah,
electorate?
yeah, I'll set that up while we're talking about our favorites.
We'll see what that cheeky third question. Oh, there's 4 questions. Good.
Holy bananas.
Yeah, I went nuts on this one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
That's
Harmony,
oh man.
what are your go ahead, man.
No, I'm just bemoaning something, but go ahead.
Okay. Harmony, what are your two favorites?
Um, don't I don't know. I like the Millstone 25, but it's too much sherry for me. It's a
Yep.
very expensive bottle of sherry that I can buy for like $40 and it'll taste the same. Um, what's the first one? My labels are not what you guys got.
It's the Glenlivet.
Oh,
You're good at
that's my
Glenlivet.
favorite, number 6, because this
Cool.
bottle is like very close to me. This is the 6 is my favorite, the Glenlivet for sure. And then like beginning to end impressions between the peat, I'm going with the blended. I liked it the first time we tried it in the Torveg tasting, and although at the time this came in second and the Mossburn Sherry number 2 was my first favorite, I like how this opened up over the hour. It's very malty, very tropical, and I was getting more like dried banana chips, dried mangoes, and everything was kind of just like cooked on a little peat fire.
Mhm.
I'm gonna vote for the Caisteal Chamuis.
All right. And you know what? You get a third vote, even though
Yeah.
you
Oh,
didn't
well,
say
I mean, if I
third
had
vote.
to third vote it, surprisingly enough for myself, I think I'm gonna go with that Lochlea. It was a
Cool.
little bit different, and I mean, I like the Longrow too. I don't know, 2 was enough. That's why I don't go to buffets. There's too many options. Get overwhelmed.
Evan?
Nice. I'm actually right with Harmony on this one, except for the third vote, where I take more than just 2 options on the buffet. I will say number 1 is the Glenlivet for me. There's something about that cask I just love. It just kind of runs opposite of a lot of the stuff uh, in this lineup, but also that we have for KWM casks, and in a really nice way. It's just a really nicely put together, subtle but like confident whiskey which is really cool. And then number 5 or number 2 for me is the Chamuis. I just love that dram, and it does show really well after 2 run-throughs on this one. If I'm picking a number 3, it's going to be begrudgingly, but it's the Longrow. I really don't want to give Springbank kudos. I mean, they deserve it, but they don't need it. So I'll just leave it
Ooh,
at that.
harsh.
Andrew.
Oh man, I'm torn. Well, I mean, for me, the Glenlivet is the runaway best whiskey in this lineup. You know, I don't know what's going to happen moving forward if we're going to see, like, we haven't ordered anything 500 ml from Springbank or boutique anything other than the stuff that we bought on discount recently. Their new 700 ml range, I think, is doing really well. Hopefully we'll see something cool in that, but I don't know if we're going to see another cool bottling like that again from them. Time will tell, but that one really stands out. The Caisteal Chamuis is my second favorite, and yeah, I really wanted the Longrow to be in that top 3, but I'm gonna have to go Millstone 25. I think that's pretty
Cool.
gorgeous stuff. Still not as good as the boutique Millstone, but it's pretty damn good. So those
Sounds
are
good.
mine.
Well, we've got 33 of 38 have voted, so I think we'll just
Let's call it.
yeah, end it and share it here. So first round, the boutique took it with 16 votes. Tied for second with 7 votes each is the Longrow Peated and the Millstone. Very cool. Everybody did get a vote. The ShamWow only got 1 vote in that one.
Wow.
Second favorite of the night, a tie between the Longrow Peated and the Millstone at 10 votes each. Chamuis, Lochlea, and Boutique all got 3 votes in that one. Which series is your favorite so far was question number 3. And series 6 to 10, so many different flavors beat by the series 1 to 5. Gotta love all that peat by 5 votes at a count of 15 to 10. And then the best SWA recognized whiskey region so far with a helpful picture there. If you can, I guess you can't expand it. That kind of sucks. But that is the SWA Scotland regional map. Speyside won with 7 votes. Isla came in second with 6 votes. The Highlands came in third with 5 votes, and then it was a tie between Campbelltown and the Netherlands. The Netherlands, that undiscovered region of Scotland.
Evan,
And then yes.
did you create like a map of Scotland that somehow included the Netherlands?
No, that would have been I should have done that on company time. That was an egregious error on my part.
Yeah, I mean the regions thing's been driving me crazy for a long time because
Agreed.
let's just talk about the fact that the Highlands, if you're gonna do that, like they've got to be subdivided, but they don't make any sense. But the one thing that makes more sense than the Highlands or the Speyside is the islands. If you were to suggest that the island distilleries had something in common, that has far more sense than the Highlands or the Speyside or even the Lowlands today, for God's sake. Anyway, pet peeve of mine.
I'm speaking on behalf of the SWA. There's only 1 distillery or 2 distilleries per island, so they don't count. They're just part of the Highlands.
Well, you just got to get a Headley right figure with money burning a hole
That's
in
right.
his or her pockets to build a distillery just to settle an argument, I suppose. Anyway, what are you gonna do? Well, that was a fun range tonight. Good lineup. It's 2 out of 3 down. I guess Sunday night's the next one. Something to
Yeah.
look forward to.
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah, really happy. Hopefully you guys were happy with the 2 series so far. It's going to be exciting to see what comes next.
yeah. I'm enjoying this because I know on a macro level what's in there, but I actually don't remember what's in each set because unlike Harmony, I didn't build them.
I was gonna say I made more calendars today, and I can tell you it's gonna get better.
Oh,
Yeah, spoilers. Tomorrow is Crown Royal Apple. So look forward to
Oh,
that.
come on, man. We know
tomorrow
it's
is what, sorry?
Canada.
Crown Royal apple.
Oh, yeah, that would be the day. Incidentally, if you do want to take advantage of that opportunity to order a bottle of Longrow Peated, not Longrow Envy, you might want to do so before the rest of the internet realizes that we've got it available for sale online. But really, you should be buying a bottle of that Glenlivet because that's pretty spectacular stuff. And I don't think we're
Absolutely.
going to have it much longer.
Yeah, I think we only
Absolutely.
have 18 bottles left of that.
Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
maybe 20, maybe.
So Evan, Harmony, anything else we need to mention before we wrap?
No, but I guess there's a virtual tasting on Thursday that I gotta get the email list ready for.
Is that the Glenlivet?
Something like that. One of the Gordon MacPhail ones.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So yeah, if you have a kit for that, we'll see it. It's those are the leftovers from the rare and old. So something to look forward to. Last thing for me, there will be a malt messenger tomorrow with some new Gordon MacPhail stuff in it. Possibly a Macallan, just saying. And I think there's something else exciting in there too, but you'll have to wait to see the email tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess
Sounds
if
good.
I could say one thing, and you're out of town, not able to come to the store, hit me up if you're looking for any special holiday bourbons that will not be on the website. If you're looking for a holiday bourbon for yourself or for others, email me at harmony@kensingtonwinemarket.com and I'll see what I can do.
Harmony, are
Yeah.
you saying you have stuff that they can't purchase online, maybe not on the floor, that
Correct.
if they ask nicely, you might be willing to
Yeah,
sell them a bottle
I'm
of?
feeling very giving these
Oh,
days, so
Nice.
let's do it.
it's quite a tempting offer.
Harmony, I thought we were keeping back that couple cases of Jim Beam white label for a special tasting.
No, we're keeping that back. Of course, that's very special. It's other things that I'm willing to give up.
Well,
Okay.
all right. Hey, sorry, are we ending this or turning it over to Mr. I don't like Millstone because I don't have a palate?
Yeah.
He already left.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
What?
I'm gonna go eat my dinner.
all right.
Yeah.
Drink
Well,
more
I gotta
whiskey.
run
over
too.
then.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll call it a night on this one and we'll reconvene on Sunday, if not before that, at the G&M tasting.
Mhm.
And
All right, everyone.
yes, for now, there is still Longrow available. So
Absolutely.
have a good night, everybody. We'll see you on Sunday.
Cheers, guys.